Welcome to our second instalment of our special Acacia EdTalk, celebrating Neurodiversity Celebration Week. Today, we're going to continue highlighting the experience of our neurodiverse colleagues, exploring their unique strengths, some of the challenges that they have so expertly navigated, and how we can all contribute to a more inclusive workplace. I'm absolutely delighted to be able to talk to April. I haven't seen her in a little while because we all work remotely in the way we do now. And she has some incredible insights to share with us today. And so I'm going to let April introduce herself first.
Hi, I'm April Harding. Obviously, I work for Acacia. I'm a tutor and assessor within the childcare team, and I assess on residential childcare and supported teaching and learning at the moment.
Lovely, thanks, April. So, April, tell us a little bit about your neurodiversity, when it was identified. Just tell us all about it.
Okie dokie. So, I'm dyslexic. I think I wasn't diagnosed until later on in life. I fumbled through school. Teachers and adults assumed I was being difficult because I was quite bright in other areas, and I was just being naughty in class. And so I was just class 7 behavioural problems in school. Managed to scrape by with basic education. Went on to college, still didn't pick me up at college, but I managed to achieve quite well at college, left with distinctions and things, started to excel a little bit, realised I actually could do it when teachers believed in me. And then as an adult, I went back and studied higher education, and it was picked up then. So it was picked up in my 20s. And quite profoundly dyslexic as well. So it was quite reassuring to get that diagnosis so that I didn't think I was just stupid, because for years and years and years, that was what I had instilled in me. I was naughty. I can't learn like everybody else. Get out of the classroom. Yeah. And I think what that set me up for in life was that I had to strive to prove to everybody that I could do well in life and achieve, and that then manifested itself into proving my teachers wrong, and I think that gave me the driving force that I've had in my career so far. So I think that was the start of realizing that actually it's okay to be dyslexic.
Well, and I will say you are so expertly proving anyone who ever doubted you wrong, April, and everything that you do. And you're such a great example as well to our learners. Students that are coming through that have had a similar experience to yourself. Because if we look to the research, if I'm a big advocate for the Made by Dyslexia movement, and all of the research and things, potentially there are 1 in 5 kids in our classrooms that are dyslexic. How many of those are actually being diagnosed and getting the right support? I've had it with my daughter. It took years to get her assessed because she was really quiet. She didn't want to stand out in the classroom, and so it was well, no, she's just stubborn, or she just doesn't want to do it. So and it took absolutely years to get past that for our system to just go, actually, okay, we'll have a look. And like yourself, thankfully we've got a little bit earlier, and now we can put the strategies in place, and I can work with the system, because this is the other thing. You can, from the other side of it, you can come across as a obstructive or pushy parent, but actually all learners that are going through our system, however young, deserve to have the right education for themselves. And it's but to hear your story, and how you said it was kind of a relief when you got that recognition. Were there any other feelings you had towards it, or towards what you'd seen before, or any kind of reflections? Did it make you think, oh well, that's why? Or how did you deal with that at that moment in time when you were in higher education?
So I think it wasn't so much the spelling and the reading, although I know I'm poor at that, but I've got tactics for that, and I mask it incredibly well. But it was the not being able to digest information as quickly. So my working memory is quite poor. I'm not very quick with information being delivered to me. So I struggle a little bit with training. So if I'm on training myself and, my tutor's going too quickly, but that's normal speed for everybody else that's neurotypical, but I can't keep up and I'll just zone out and switch off. And I used to think that that was just me being dippy. I'm a dippy blonde, and that's what everybody used to say. But actually, that diagnosis, then the penny dropped, and it was actually, oh, okay, my executive thinking's okay, but actually my working memory isn't. So it was that reassurance that actually, again, I'm not slow. I'm not, being difficult. It is just the way my brain processes it. And then as soon as I realized that, I could actually let people know if I was confident to. That's a work in progress still, I think. Then they would then give me the slides afterwards, or they'd know I was zoning out. So don't put me on the spot in front of everybody else, because I will just lock down and I'm probably not going to go to the next lesson because now you've just made me feel inadequate. So yeah, it allowed me to kind of engage better with my learning and my education, and it allowed those teachers and tutors actually to engage better with me. So that was a massive change going forward.
Right. Yeah, and you highlighted another key bit there, the ability to mask these things, or to find your own tactics to deal with, so you don't have to, you know, it isn't seen by others, and it's incredible, the different talents people have to find their own coping mechanisms, and actually, because you're dealing with it all of the time, you've found so many methods along the way. It interests me, I think I'll probably come back to it in a few minutes, but it interests me when you said about, being able to talk about it. And, we are seeing more talk about neurodiversity. It's fantastic, but we've still got a long way to go. We are seeing, like I've already highlighted, things like Made by Dyslexia, and that being a talent and a skill on LinkedIn is a massive difference. Actually recognizing that, there are superpowers, and I want to come back to those, but I'll come back to that in a minute, if that's okay. So, in terms of your day to day, then, what kind of strategies do you use to change how things are done, or make what kind of strategies are you using in the workplace?
Okie dokie. So there's the obvious things like changing the color of the screen. Obviously, we do everything on one file. And I can play with that. I can tweak it. I've got a different color screen from everybody else, which looks quite pretty, but it enables the words to stay put. So anything that is on a white background, I will struggle with. If there is too much information on a page, I will struggle with that as well. And so that's one strategy that I haven't had to put in place, because luckily Acacia have that system. So it's great. I will use lots of color coding on spreadsheets. I can't digest huge amounts of information on spreadsheets, so I have to color block it and color code it. I'm really lucky that I've got a manager who supports me with that and understands it completely, and likewise will color code and kind of break things down simpler for me. So that's a really lovely strategy. I change work for the learners, but it helps me as well. So if there's lots of information on the task that we're delivering to a learner, and a lot of my learners will be overwhelmed by that themselves, but I am too. So I will make resources that actually is easier for me to mark, if I'm being honest, but actually the feedback that I'm getting from my learners is they're finding it a lot easier to use. Work is coming back quicker. So it's this lovely kind of symbolic relationship, I suppose, that I have with them, that actually we mirror each other. So yeah, they're just a few things. I have a paper diary, which I think probably irritates everybody, because sometimes I'll forget to use the electric diary and I'll get a little reminder, but I'll always upload and do it. But I prefer a paper diary because that's how my brain works. So, and I can color code it. Yeah.
I'm absolutely with you on that one. Anybody who's looked at my calendar will tell you it's absolutely horrendous. But that's because the lists are here, and also because I have a bit of a thing about I don't like to feel that level of control that my diary is controlling me. So I'm absolutely with you on that one, April. You mentioned one thing there, and it allows us to go into another kind of arm of this discussion about technology. So you mentioned OneFile, and that's a portfolio system that we use for our learners. And it's great that we've got all of those opportunities to individualize it, make it work. Are there any other tools, because we can do those things in Word, Microsoft, it's great that we've got, text to speech. So, and vice versa. There's so many things that we can do. But are there any other specific tools, or are you using AI? Because again, that's a huge topic of conversation. Do you use any other tools that help you? And are you using AI for it as well?
So I use AI. I know that I tell my learners AI is a brilliant tool. Use it for research, of course. Please don't copy and paste it though. Use it as a learning tool. I will do exactly the same. And I love AI because it's exactly how my brain works. I think a dyslexic brain is very similar to the computer software that's out there. We like very short paragraphs, we like bullet points, we like a conclusion, an introduction, and AI is phenomenal for that. So yes, I use AI for all of my research. I do use it for some of my worksheets as well. I then tweak it afterwards because obviously it's not going to fit properly to the standards that I need it to, but it enables me to be able to focus a lot more on other areas of my job rather than spending hours and hours and hours trying to create resources when there are so many other aspects to my job that are just as important, like, enabling my learners to be timely. So yeah, AI is brilliant. And I have used in the past speech recognition software specifically for dyslexics. I didn't really get on with it very well. I tend to talk quite quickly and the software couldn't keep up with me. And I'd get very frustrated going back into it and having to change things. So I tend to use dictate a lot on Word, especially if I'm writing up observations. I find that a lot easier to then go in and then change it. But yeah, I found a lot of the software for me didn't work very well. But then I think a lot of my problems that I have managing my dyslexia is more kind of the working memory side of it, and having to have very strict processes in place for me to make sure that my time management is good. Because I get overwhelmed quite quickly with lots and lots of things going on. And obviously assessing and tutoring is like spinning plates, isn't it? And juggling.
Yeah.
And so I have to be very careful about how I manage that.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right in terms of some of the tools will be great for some people and not for others. You've worked your way through to find which parts work for you. And let's be honest, we all have different ways of doing things because of who we are as individuals. So, testing them out, seeing which work for you is so incredibly important. And it's great to hear that you found some that are really working for you. I was talking about AI. I've just been listening to one of our TLPs and talking about how they use artificial intelligence. And they gave a really great quote about how AI should be helping with the doing, but not replacing the thinking. And I think that's a great way to look at it. And like you've said, talking to learners, it's a great tool, and all learners need to know how it's going to affect their jobs in the future, how they can use it. But also, we've got to be using it in exactly the right way. So we're not letting it take over from the other things. So yeah, really important. Fab. Okay. So you've talked about some of the challenges, you've talked about some of the incredible tools that you're using, but I really want to hear about your superpowers, April, because I'm a great believer that it's more like superpowers and the great skills that actually your dyslexia brings too. So what are your superpowers?
So I think, and I've only recently learnt this, probably in the last 6 years. I went into primary school education and supported a nurture, provision and behavioural system. And I realized that one of my superpowers was to be strategic. So I will recognize patterns and systems. And I thought this was really normal. And I thought that everybody did this. And I was talking to my colleagues and I was like, no, we don't know. I don't know. That's not how our brains work. And I suddenly realized that everything I do is pattern based, and everything is visual. I think of literally everything. Days of the week are visual. Wednesday will be in bold. The weekend will be in a bright color. And it's always been that way for me. And so I realized that not everybody thinks that way. And that was a real light bulb moment. But what it did was it allowed me to visualize processes, and I could take advantage to that, because if there were loopholes in the system, or I needed to put a process in place for the kids, or I needed to change what was going on in the environment, then I could fix it. I could do it. It was like a jigsaw piece. And then the same when I was at college, I took on new curriculum, and I was the only tutor that took that curriculum on, and it had been taught incorrectly actually beforehand, and there was pages and pages and pages of students' work that needed to be cross-referenced and mapped to the new curriculum. And I had a couple of months to do it because it was heading for the summer term. And I did it. And I did it quite easily. It wasn't a difficult job. And that's not me being big-headed. That was just the fact that it fitted the way my brain works, because it was all patterns, systems. And, you know, it just works. It's really hard to explain how it feels and how it is, but that is definitely a superpower, I think.
I'd 100% agree, and I think so many people will be envious of that superpower, because it is being, you know, I suppose to simplify it, being able to see the wood for the trees and being able to put all of these things together when other people are just so in the detail that are struggling to recognise those things and make a difference. And the fact that you've noticed that, you know, things were being taught wrong because of how it was being done, only with your ability could that be seen. So fantastic. Okay. So you did mention earlier about talking about it, and sometimes I get the impression sometimes that's maybe not the easiest, and I'm so glad you've come to talk to me about it and to be able to help us share our experiences with a wider audience. But how have you found talking about it in the workplace? What might stop you talking about it, or why do you have those kind of uncertainties about it?
So previously in other jobs, my very first training job that I had, where I was assessing, a manager actually turned around and said, had we known you were dyslexic, we wouldn't have employed you. I know. And it wasn't that long ago. We're talking, wow, I suppose 20 years. But, you know, that was their attitude. And I kind of suddenly thought, oh, gosh, I wonder if everybody's like this. Perhaps I need to be really careful. And I'd work so many hours trying to hide it, trying to mask it. I used to get my mum to proofread documents for me because she was a HR manager. So her literacy is incredibly good. And that kind of was the pattern for a few years. And then I'd gone back into safeguarding at that point and direct family work, because I didn't think I fitted into the more admin teaching side of things, although that's where my passion always was. And then I went back to it and I had a completely different experience. It was amazing. I went into college and primary education, teaching and supporting learners, then directly teaching. And the managers within those systems had a completely different attitude towards it. It was very much kind of like, no, this is brilliant. If you make a spelling mistake on a PowerPoint, then get the learners to identify SPAG. And I used to put it on the bottom of my PowerPoints all the time. And the girls used to love it at college because we used to teach childcare, primarily girls, not being sexist. Yeah, and it was just all of a sudden, it was just lovely. And for those learners that struggled with education, just like I had, they all of a sudden were learning because it's okay, because my tutor's that way too. And I wasn't, you know, hammering down on their work, and it was, you know, embracing what their actual qualities were. And so I think that was the turning point for me to go, do you know what, actually I'm dyslexic and that's okay. And if it's not okay, then you're not the right company for me. and that penny dropped, and it was huge moment. You know, if you've been told all your life that you're silly, you can't do things, you're not as clever as everybody else, you're never going to achieve anything, then you believe it. And then you just need a few key people within your job roles, you know, to be that way. And when I came to work for Acacia and I was interviewed, and I was really honest, and I was allowed to be honest at interview, and it was embraced from day one. So even at interview, you know, you've got senior managers saying, oh, that's okay, that's great, well, you can adapt the work then for the learners, that's fantastic. So as soon as I came into Acacia, I was allowed to be me 100%. I didn't even have to try and adapt or be anything I'm not. And it's just got better ever since, really, I think.
And that's great to hear. And not that I'm surprised at all. I haven't been here as long as I have now. But I don't know. You can see by the look on my face, it horrifies me when I hear about those experiences. And ultimately, it's those employers that are missing out, because they are missing out on this vast variety of skills that you know, being made by dyslexia brings. And you know, and hopefully we are seeing less and less of that. But is it ironed out? Absolutely not. Does it cause people fear? And it absolutely shouldn't. It's all about understanding, and it's all about seeing how your traits, you know, and some companies and parts of the government, in terms of like MI5 and thing, will specifically recruit for those made by dyslexia because of the skills and different ways of looking. Like you've talked about your strategic and being able to put those things together. How incredibly important is that in any job, but in specific jobs, you know? Yeah. So I'm so glad that you've seen how different that can be. And you've hit the nail on the head in education, being an example to those students that it's okay, you know, much earlier than you. Thankfully, they've been able to say, actually, there's something to aspire to here, because I can do whatever, because I have all of these other skills. And yeah, we can get past all of those things, and there are ways to do that. So yeah, thank you for sharing that, because I know that's also not necessarily easier. So, just a couple more questions then for you, really. What do you think? What do you wish more people understood about neurodiversity or dyslexia specifically?
I thought we're all different. I think you're very much labelled. Oh, you're neurodiverse. You're quirky. You're spicy. You're whatever terminology they want to give you, and they automatically think that your characteristics are the same as everybody else that's in that particular label. And that is so not true. We are all incredibly different. And I think a lot of people, especially later on in life being diagnosed, we probably have multiple things going on. My son has ADHD. I'm pretty much sure that I have ADHD as well. My mum would definitely say that. And I think it's important to realize, just because a person has a label, it doesn't mean that, you know, they fit into the same box as everybody else, you know, and you might have other little things going on as well that make you completely individual. So, you know, I'm not great at spelling, but spelling isn't my huge issue. I'm incredibly good at reading. And so I don't fit the mold that you would think that most people with dyslexics, oh, you can't spell, you can't read. You know, no, that's not the case for everybody. There's a whole load of other stuff going on for everybody that's neurodiverse. So, yeah.
Well, I was going to ask another question, but I think that was just the perfect way to finish our discussions, if I'm honest. So, thank you ever so much. It's been really important. It is so important for us to continue to share the insights and experiences, to get out to that wider audience and show people exactly what neurodiversity can bring to organisations, and you know what an incredible journey you can have if you are neurodiverse as well. So your story is so important, that as a reminder of why we embrace neurodiversity, and it's so valuable for all of us to know that. So thank you to everybody who's watching. Let's continue this conversation, challenge those assumptions, and celebrate the incredible strengths that come with different ways of thinking. Can't wait to speak to our next neurodiverse individual and continue our series of EdTalks.